everyone, my name is Hayley Brunner. I'm a research and education librarian here at UNTHSC, and today we're going to do a little bit of discussing predatory publishing. This is something that is really hard to nail down and isn't always black and white, but we here at the library want to provide you with some tools to evaluate journals that you would potentially like to publish in. So to get into predatory publishing, we are first going to talk about open access publishing, which is where predatory publishing has grown out of. Then we're going to go into predatory publishing practices and how to spot the warning signs. And then we are going to get into some real life examples, some emails that came into my inbox and how I would evaluate those to see if they're predatory. So we'll start with our traditional journal publishing model. So you do your research, you write up an amazing research article, you submit it to a journal, it goes through the peer review process, it's accepted, rejected, and you sign away your copyright to this journal and they publish it. And then libraries and consumers pay to buy back that access through site licenses or subscriptions. And so moving into open access publishing, open access literature is digital, online, free of charge, and free of most copyright and licensing restrictions. So this is something that's really started catching on. You'll notice a lot of the big name publishers have also started introducing different sections of their companies that are dedicated to open access. Elsevier, JAMA Open, B&J Open, PLOS One. So everybody's kind of hopping on this bandwagon. And why is this happening? It's known as the serials crisis here in the library world. Elsevier, one that I just mentioned, they have a higher profit margin than Google, higher than Walmart. They are making a lot of money. And we want to be able to open that up for everyone and give people access to taxpayer-funded research instead of having to buy it back from researchers that are being employed by these universities through taxpayer money. A lot of this, I'm not sure how many have actually experienced this, but some grants are starting to mandate that research be published in certain open access journals. And then there's just the wanting to democratize information and ensure that people all over the world are able to gain access to information. So how is open access different than the traditional publishing model? The traditional publishing model, there are barriers such as the high cost of journal subscriptions, and then you have the copyright restrictions that go along with that. Open access is going to remove those barriers. Your research is freely available online to anybody with an internet connection. And you also have a Creative Commons license. So people are free to duplicate and share your work. Why would you want to do this? You get to maintain your author rights with that Creative Commons license. There is some evidence out there that open access increases citation counts, which to me makes a lot of sense. Because if more people are seeing your work, more people are able to build off of that and cite you in their work as well. And then back to that democratization of information, more people have access to academic literature, especially in universities that just don't have the budget to obtain these high dollar journals. And then you might just have to because of those funder mandates that we talked about earlier. So how this is done is through article processing charges. So that money to publish has to come from somewhere. And with this, it's being shifted to the author. And this is called article processing charges, or APCs. So these are the fees charged to authors by these OA journals to cover the cost of production and to make it openly available. Sometimes they're called publication charges. People are starting to write these into their grants, and there are some universities that are able to provide these article processing charges funds for that. So APCs are not an indicator of a predatory publisher, so it's not inherently predatory if they are charging APCs. predatory publishers are using APCs to game the system and get that money from people. So something to be aware of. So predatory publishing is an exploitative industry that uses the open access publishing model and the pressures of scientific publishing to profit without providing the same services of legitimate publishers. So ultimately, what makes this a big issue is first of all, the lack of peer review. Sometimes this can be not a peer review at all or a poor peer review. So people are able to publish their work without any discourse or back and forth from reviewers. Nobody disputing what they're putting out there. So it kind of dampens the quality of what is out there. And a lot of these journals are able to entice authors because they have these lightning fast peer reviews. Another thing, as a librarian, discovery and preservation is something that's really important to us. If you're putting all this effort and energy into putting your work out there, we want people to be able to find it through PubMed, Scopus, Embase, any of those big databases. And so these predatory journals are not going to be indexed in those. Legitimate publishers, they have an incentive to archive your work and keep it up on the website, where with predatory publishers, sometimes for whatever reason, your work can just disappear off the website and nobody's going to be able to get to it later on. And then lastly, we want to think about your reputation. So if you end up publishing in a journal that is considered predatory, that could hurt your reputation, it could hurt your tenure efforts, and then it could also look bad for your institution. So these are the kinds of things we want to look out for. So some of the common practices we're seeing from these predatory journals, they may charge you an APC and then never publish your work in any form. They can promise you a thorough peer review and then not do one at all, or have one that's subpar. A lot of times they're going to have fake editorial boards. So these are going to be people that are completely made up. They could be real people, but they are not in your field whatsoever. They could also be people that are deceased. So that's one thing to take a look at. They can publish your article and then the next day it's taken down with no promise of archiving it. A lot of times they will also promise you your author rights through that Creative Commons license, but they actually have you sign away your copyright and then make it extremely difficult for you to pull your work off the web. And a lot of times they'll extort you for money to try to get them to take it down. So in evaluating these journals, there are a few places you can go, a few different tools that we use. First of all, we're always going to look and see if the journal is indexed in a major database. If it's in PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, Embase, any of the EBSCO databases, that's a great place to look, not only if it is predatory, but also to see if anybody's going to be able to find your work whenever it's up. We can check in the Directory of Open Access Journals, or the DOAJ. So like the name suggests, you can go and they have very strict criteria for what makes it into the directory. And then they also have really helpful information with each entry there. It'll list the APCs, it will list what kind of peer reviews in there, and lots of other really helpful information. You can look and see if the journal is in the journal citation reports. This is another one you can access from the library's website. If it doesn't have an impact factor or any of those kinds of metrics, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad journal, but if they claim to have those metrics and then they aren't found in journal citation reports, then that's kind of a red flag. You can check Cavell's Blacklist, which is a new resource that UNTHSC just acquired. There's the blacklist, and they also have the whitelist. And so the whitelist is a place where you can look for different metrics about the journal, ones that they have determined are legitimate. So you can look at either side of the coin on Cavell's. What's cool about the blacklist is you can enter in a journal or a publisher. If the journal has any violations that people have reported, the violations will populate there. Specifically, what kinds of violations are there? So maybe they are using a proxy location as their office location. Maybe they aren't preserving the digital works. It's going to list those there. And so that can be really helpful. And then you could also look at the journal website, or if you got a solicitation email, you can determine if there are any red flags within that. So whenever you move into each specific email or website, some general things you want to look for. So you want to look at the peer review. Is the timeline too good to be true? Odds are it's too good of a deal if you think it's too good of a deal. Are you able to track down what their peer review standards look like? If they don't talk about peer review at all, then that's another good indicator. The editorial board of the journal, are you able to recognize any of these names? Are they experts in your field? If you do a little digging, do they have any relation to your field whatsoever? Are they still alive? So there are a few different ways to look at that as well, because a lot of times they will take people's names and use them as editors, but these people have no clue that they're actually editors for this journal. And a lot of times you can actually reach out to them as well and say, hey, are you actually an editor for this journal? So just a few different things you can try. So some of our favorite things to do is to look at the contact information. You can look at the address on Google Maps, and if it shows just an empty parking lot or an empty lot, odds are that that's a false address. So those things can be fun. You could also give their number a call and see what you get. Professionalism, this one can be a little bit tricky. So is their website professional? Are there grammar or spelling mistakes? Was your invitation just a form email? And with this, we want to do a little caveat, because a lot of these open access journals are coming from countries where English is not their first language. So we want to be careful and balance that. We don't want to just count something out because of a few grammar or spelling mistakes, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. And so these emails that are sent as solicitations, a lot of them can be a little bit fun to go through. And I've got some examples of some emails that I've gotten recently and pulled them out of my inbox to kind of look at these examples. So here's an invitation I got. Dear Dr. Hayley Brunner, for me, that's always my first red flag, because I personally do not have a PhD. So you might have a PhD, so maybe that's not a red flag for you, but for me, it's always a red flag. That shows that they really don't know anything about me. This is a form email of some kind. Hope you're doing well. Can we have your article for your successful release of upcoming issue in our journal? It's a humble request from our end. Acknowledge this email within 24 hours. Have a lovely day ahead. So yeah, some of the grammar is kind of wacky on here, but again, I don't want to inherently, I don't want to just rule it out because of that. So I will visit this journal. Okay, and from just looking at the website itself, you can't tell off of first glance if this is predatory or not. Let's see. I think we can make it to our. So apparently this is a new journal as well, so that's something to take in, because you can consider that, because there's just one issue, two issue, but they do have a journal that's up and online. And I can get to a PDF here. Okay. So to get to some of those outside tools that I mentioned before, I'm going to go to the library website and go first to Directory of Open Access Journals, or the DOAJ. Associative Journal of Health Sciences. Let's see if this is in here. We can search the journal name, and then we can also search the publisher and see if anything pop up. Okay, so nothing on the journal name. Let's try Crimson Publishers. Again, nothing's popping up here. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not great, but it's not giving me any reason to trust it as well. Let's take a look at Cabell's. Again, you can access this from the library website in that same drop-down list. Okay, I'll look at the blacklist first. Let's look at Associative Journal of Health Sciences. So nothing comes up. Let's see about the publisher. Okay, and so some things do come up on the blacklist for Crimson publishers. Let's take a look at some of these. Modern approaches in drug designing. So it'll tell you these specific violations. Publisher displays prominent statements that promise rapid production and unusually quick peer review. Journal or publisher uses a virtual office or other proxy business as its physical address. The same article appears in more than one journal. So that kind of gives me some clues. This is probably not, even if it's not inherently predatory, this is probably not a journal that you want to submit your manuscript to. So those are just a few of the tools for that one in particular. All right, here's another one. Dear Dr. Brunner, again, I'm not a doctor. Good morning, your time is my preference to confer about our journal's concern. While I was in process of framing the review panel, I found your innovative profile, which would apt to our journal proficiency. So I request you be a part of our world journey of nursing, palliative care, and hospice science. So a few things jump out to me. The grammar is obviously pretty off. And I found your innovative profile. I don't have an ORCID ID or anything like that, so I'm not sure exactly what profile they were talking to. I promise my LinkedIn profile is not innovative or anything prolific. So that's a little funny to me, but let's take a look again at this one as well. And this one, whenever I plopped it into this presentation, it took me a long time to find this journal. And that was just me Googling it. And I mean, you want people to be able to find your work. And so that's, first of all, another red flag for me right there. So here's the website. It doesn't look super professional, but nothing about it is sticking out to me. One thing, whenever I looked at this one earlier, I tried to access the archives of the article, and whenever I click, this link doesn't go anywhere. Even if I think, well, maybe it's my computer and open link in a new tab, it brings you back to the same homepage. So this right here lets me know this journal has no archiving policy. Whenever you submit to them, they're probably not putting it up anywhere. So that's another good indicator for you. Right, and this is actually one I got from Dr. Litt in Public Health, and I just love this one because of the address. Hi, beloved Dr. Litt DM. How are you doing today? This is Maria Martinez. I saw your recent publication online, and we are happy to write this email conveying my thanks for such manuscript. We received few requests from students associated with our journal, SM Addiction Research and Therapy, to gather your current research to publish in our journal. Kindly let us know your availability. Again, same kind of professionalism remarks, but if I take a look at this journal as well. Website, I'm not seeing anything right off the bat that's giving me alarm. Let me look at this one again in Cabell. So if I look at SM Addiction Research and Therapy here in Cabell's. So this one is on Cabell's blacklist. Let's see what kind of violations it's got. Publisher hides or obscures relationships with for-profit partner companies. Oof, not sure what that really means, but not sure how I feel about it. No articles are published or the archives are missing issues or articles. And then it has surprise fees. Peer review, evident data showing that the editor review board members do not possess academic expertise to reasonably qualify them to be publication gatekeepers in the journals field. So whenever looking at that editorial board, these are going to be people that have nothing to do with the field, have nothing to do with psychology or addiction or any of those things. So a lot of interesting points here. So those are some pretty clear violations. I would stay away from this journal. So this is all, it's kind of scary. One kind of thing to give you some hope is the federal government is looking at this. People are seeing this and trying to nail it down. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually won a judgment with Omics International, and they were just a big conglomerate of these predatory journals under one publisher. And so this was April of 2019, and that was $50 million against Omics. And again, kind of here at the tail end of this, I want to reiterate that predatory publishing doesn't equal legitimate open access. Open access is a good thing. It's a good thing for us as scholars. It's a good thing for our friends that are international, for libraries that really can't afford to pay the big bucks for the journals. It's good for you to be able to get your work out there without any limitations. But we do just need to be mindful of some of these journals. So we in the library also have some resources to help you with this. So if you go back to the library website, under research guides, we have one that is specific for predatory publishing. Talks a little bit about predatory publishing, what we've seen today in this presentation, and then it also under this resources that can help. So Cabell's that we looked at, Directory of Open Access Journals. We also have some great checklists here for you. So email evaluation tool. So it's just a nice little checklist that you can go through. And if more of the checklist is on the no side, then you probably don't want to publish in that journal. So we've got one for email evaluation, and then we also have for website, and then predatory conferences are also kind of becoming a thing as well. So we have another checklist for the predatory conferences to kind of look through. DOAJ, which we looked at before, I frequently look there not only to see if something is not on there, but if I am helping someone think about what journals they want to publish in, this is a great place to go. Cabell's, we talked about the blacklist before, but on the flip side of that, the whitelist is a great place to look at different statistics and acceptance rates and different information for journals that you would like to publish in. So it's kind of another, on the flip side of it, being able to go somewhere and look for reputable journals. And finally, I just want to encourage you, if you run into any of these issues or want us to run through a journal with you, we're here for you. This can be a little gray and a little hard to evaluate and wade through, but definitely give us a call or email us, come see us. We'd be happy to take a look with you and help you evaluate if a journal is right for you. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time, and don't forget to contact us if you have any questions.